Welcome to the SitRep. It's a late one. It's the evening time, which I don't usually do a SitRep in the evening time. Well, I rarely do them in the evening time. But today, I am, because I've just been busy and doing other stuff. So yeah, I haven't done one in a couple of days. Thought I better bang one out, because I'm definitely not going to do one tomorrow, unless I get one out tomorrow night. But I thought I'd do one today. Because there's lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff going on in the world. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. Appreciate it, as always. I don't know how many of you join me. A handful of people who watch this. Maybe a couple more. I welcome you to this. This is the Sit Rep, where we go through news stories that I've come across over the last couple of days. And there is a lot of news that's happening right now. But this is just the stuff that I find interesting, that piques my interest. All right, without any further ado, let's crack into it. I don't think there was anything else I was going to say. What am I going to start off with today? Let's talk about volcanoes, because there was a big one in Kamchatka, in Russia, the peninsula there, which is not too far off Alaska. And apparently by now the ash would have hit Alaska, but that was quite a big explosion. If you got to see some of the video footage of that, it was awesome. The first video footage I saw of it was satellite imagery of it going off. Quite a big one. Anyway, I'll be interested in what the effect of that is. Volcanoes, a lot of people, it went under the radar, the Tonga volcano, and then the possible weather effects. Nobody has been talking about any of the weather effects that we're seeing recently having anything to do with Tonga. People are ready to blame climate change. People are ready to blame chemtrails, or what is it? HARP? What's the other one? HARP? Some sort of grand government conspiracy. I'm not saying it's not any of those things, but also a whole shitload of particles were pumped into the air over a small period, and that would then disperse through the atmosphere and probably would have a cooling effect, which would change weather patterns. So that's happened again. Big volcano in Russia, this time the northern hemisphere. Interesting fun fact, and somebody might be able to fact check me on this, but I would be interested to know the crossover between north and south hemisphere when it comes to these sorts of things, because my limited understanding of weather patterns, southern hemisphere is going one way, northern hemisphere is going the other. The intermingling of them doesn't happen readily because of that. So it hits the equator and kind of has a barrier where it doesn't easily transfer across. But I don't know. So anyway, that was the northern hemisphere. We'll see what happens up there. Obviously, not anything that's going to happen like immediately. There might be some localized sort of effects, especially in places like Alaska and going off across Canada. But this is sort of like months down the line. In the next couple of months, I think we'll see maybe changes in weather patterns happening there. Also, interesting, there's a number of really interesting earthquake activities that are happening at the moment, specifically Colombia, in and around a volcano called Nevado del Ruiz, which is a very deadly, infamous volcano because it killed 25,000 people in 1985. Didn't happen in the last 3 weeks, so people don't care about it. But 1985, all the way back in 1985. Yeah, there are still some people alive from then. I'm one of them. It killed 25,000 people there. They've just had 6,000 quakes per day in this area around this volcano. So they're thinking it's about to blow again. Dormant, no more. The other earthquakes that I was looking at that were very interesting was a stream of earthquakes that happened through down north to south through California. And there is a huge fault line that runs down California, the San Andreas Fault. And this is one of those things that people who look at doomsday sort of stuff, i.e. me, you research into this sort of stuff, and the San Andreas Fault. Actually, there was a movie with The Rock. I haven't seen it, but there was some sort of movie with The Rock in it. I know. There's a movie with The Rock in it that I haven't seen. That and Skyscraper, I think, are probably his only films that I haven't seen. Anyway, I think that movie is about this fault line cracking open, and it has the potential and is possibly overdue for it as well. So always look in that California area whenever a quake happens. It's a big deal, but a series of quakes that are running roughly along that fault line there could be a bit of a problem. If you happen to be watching this from California, what are you doing? Why are you listening to some Aussie speak about? You've got enough people in the US who's probably telling you this shit. Consider moving. That's all I'm going to say. That's earthquakes, volcanoes. Let's talk about nuclear now, and not the one that you're probably thinking. Let's talk about nuclear power. I like to get on the little soapbox and have a chat about nuclear power every now and then, because not that I'm a big fan of it, not that I'm a proponent of it. It's just that when I think about the amount of energy that we use in the world and how people want to continue living the way they're living, i.e. in cities consuming a lot of energy, I just don't know how we're going to do it without nuclear energy, and especially if you want to go off coal. Well, Germany, I've talked about their energy plans in the past. They're about to switch off their last remaining nuclear plants. Germany will shut down its 3 remaining nuclear plants on Saturday, betting that it can fulfill its green ambitions without atomic power, despite the energy crisis caused by the Ukraine war. So I've talked about this ad nauseum before. Germany is hurting for energy. A possible ways that they could alleviate that pain kind of got switched off or turned off with the Ukraine war, and then possibly more forcibly through the what appears to be sabotaging of the Nord Stream pipeline. But we still don't know who did that. America, the US. US did it, but we have no idea where that came from. Anyway, they're going to switch off their nuclear power plants. Seems like a great idea to me. Good luck. It's coming in the summer there. They'll be fine. What could go wrong? You can just turn these things back on again, right? Switch off the nuclear power plant. It's like a light switch. There's a big switch there. It just goes off. Done. We're going to turn it Hasselhoff. Bit of late night humor for you. Good for them. That's happening on the 15th of April. Good luck. That's all I can say to those guys. What's India, though? Exact opposite direction. Indian minister eyes 9% nuclear share by 2047. By the way, that timeline, hang on, let me just read this. Installed nuclear capacity is set to more than triple by 2031. So that's, 8 years away. And nuclear power plants are likely to generate about 9% of the country's electricity by 2047, according to Minister of State Jitendra Singh. So at the moment, they've got about 3% of their power needs are nuclear. They want to triple it, and they're looking at a timeline of 2047. This is realistic right now. I think we're actually hitting a point where the economics of starting a nuclear power plant, as in from scratch, are becoming restrictive. And so they're looking at this very, very long-term power. I mean, 9% might not seem like a huge thing. Just to have a think about, by 2047, by most estimates, India will be the most populous country on the face of the earth. So 9% of the most populous country, we're talking over 1.5. I think they're looking at 1.7 billion human beings. My math ain't so good, but 9% of the power needs, that's, let's say it's, 10% even, to make the maths easy. You're looking at orders of magnitude. That's supplying power to them than more than, the US, Canada, Mexico combined. I think, 300, is my maths right on this? It's too late for me to be doing maths. I'm not even going to attempt it, all right? It's a lot of people. It's a lot of power that they're generating. Interesting story though that I saw, that not everyone, I think, is going into madness, the green madness. That some people are actually like going, oh, actually, nuclear power, that might be the way that we get out of this issue. At the very least, it can be the stopgap. It could be the band-aid that gets us to the other side, where we can sort out some sort of magic green technology. It's just not there yet. People are probably sick of me saying this, but it's just not there yet. Yeah, so that's kind of good news, right? I don't like to be all doom and gloom. I think this is a step in the right direction from India, that they're increasing the amount of power that they're going to be generating from nuclear power. Right. What's the next one that I'm going to go into? Australian collapses. Let's talk about Australian collapses. I got two. I got two for you. First one. Let's talk more about a little company called. I've lost the name of it. Porter Davis. There it is. Porter Davis, which is the country's 12th largest home builder, suddenly halted work on 1,700 homes in Victoria and Queensland on March 31st after it collapsed into an estimated $20 million funding hole. Obviously, this is not a good thing, and I've talked about these kind of collapses as opposed to, say, a bank, which is bad for many, many reasons. Construction collapses. This is bad in of itself. It's bad because of the second and third order effects, but it's bad as a sign of what's going on when your construction industry is falling apart. This is a pretty dire situation that you're looking at, and this is what's happening here. So we've had, I want to say, like 4 or 5 now in Australia that have collapsed, and I'm talking about large. This is the 12th largest. Might not seem like that, kind of could seem like small potatoes. And 20 million, when I say 20 million to other countries around the world, they're like, whatever. But this is belying something bigger. But it's not. That's their little section of it. 20 million funding gap that they had a problem with. The actual bigger problem here is much, much larger, and they don't actually have numbers on this. But the biggest issue that I have with these collapses is the unseen collapse that happens with it. As in, this thing goes into a sinkhole, and there's all these other smaller businesses around it that get pulled down into it. It's all the sole traders. It's all the individual contractors. It's all Jim Bob, Bobby, Bo, Joe Thornton or something. I don't know what his name is. I can't think of names right now. The electrician who was working with these guys and, put himself out on a limb to upscale his business so he could fulfill these 1,700 homes, or however much his slice of it was. And all of a sudden they disappear. Well, guess what happens to old Jimmy Joe Bob? Bam, down the gurgler with him. He's going to be filing for bankruptcy as well. And that's just one story. There's going to be thousands of stories like that, of individual Aussie battlers who are getting sucked down the gurgler. For my international guess, Aussie battler might not make sense. That's your blue collar worker. That's what you call them in Australia. Your little Aussie battlers, the people who just go in day after day and nose to the grindstone working away. These are the people that are going to get hurt from this. All right, another collapse in Australia. Red Cycle. What do? They recycle plastic. I think they're one of the biggest, actually, recyclers of plastic in Australia. Now, what were they doing? They were actually doing the soft plastics. This is a really interesting one because in years past, I was a hippie, and I threw out some, I hung around with a whole heap of hippies. And I was in that zone. I was like, we've got to save the planet and, do all the love, peace, mung beans and all that sort of stuff. Which I don't necessarily not believe now. I just, have maybe taken less of the Kool-Aid on. Anyway, enough about that. Stay on point here. What I'm talking about is the collapse of this. They recycle soft plastics. And I remember saying to someone, I was throwing out soft plastics, and they're like, hey, you can recycle this. You just take it to Woolies or Coles, the major supermarkets here in Australia, and you put it in the bin, and then they've got this fantastic thing that recycles it. And I'm like, oh, what fucking magic technology is that can recycle this stuff? Oh, okay, I'll do it. And so I started separating my soft plastics, and I just always thought it was weird. I'm like, I wonder how they do it and why we haven't been doing that since the start. And like, why then did we ban all plastic bags in Australia, in certain states in Australia? Say plastic bags are bad, can't use them. And then in the past couple of years, what I've noticed is the regression of that informal law. It wasn't actually a law. That's the thing. Everyone just took it on. Everyone's like, oh, yep, they're banned now, so we can't use them. But if you go into a shop, I went into a shop just the other day and I sort of tested this out and they said, do you want a bag with that? And I'm like, yeah. And I waited for them to charge me like 10, 15 cents or whatever they're going to do. And they didn't do that. And I was like, that's interesting. All I have to do is ask for the plastic bag. Well, I guess that's because we have such a great recycling ability for these soft plastics now. Turns out we don't, and we never did. Secret stockpiles of plastic bags continue to be found around Australia following the collapse of plastic recycler RedCycle, with more than a dozen new dump sites located across 6 states in the past month. So what this company was doing was getting the plastic, getting a whole heap of money from the companies, from the Woolies and the Coles, from the government, I assume, as well, for doing good stuff. And then they were just like hiding it away under the rug somewhere out in Australia, in these dump sites. And they got caught doing it. And then I think actually the reason they didn't get caught doing it and then went, our bad, we don't have the money to pay for it now, we're fucked. I think they actually went bankrupt or got caught out in their debts. And then somebody started looking into them, and then that's how it actually got caught out. I'm not 100% sure on that, but from what I've read thus far on it, that's what it looks like it is. And so, yeah, now we've got liquidators, environmental regulators, and supermarket giants have been investigating the circumstances of the company's failure and attempting to manage thousands of tons of plastic abandoned by RedCycle. So these guys ran both Coles and Woolworths' signature soft plastic recycling programs. So if you're one of those people who's been separating your soft plastics and taking it down to Woolies, like good boy or girl that you are, I'm sorry to say it's all for naught, which sucks because I was one of those people. I did it. I didn't do it all the time, but I have done it in the past, and I have done it throughout the years as well. So yeah, that's it's a bit of a eye opener, isn't it? But I just feel like there are more and more of these little things. One of the things I want to point out about this is this whole ideology of green technology that people believe like we can just switch to this green technology and we'll all be fine. We can just recycle soft plastic. We can just switch to lithium batteries. We can just go to solar and everything's going to be fine. And more you find stories like this where they're actually pointing out that like all this stuff that you thought was good maybe is not as good as you thought about it. And those 3 things that I just mentioned there are particularly infamous in that. So these plastic bags, these lithium batteries, we should know that they're not that fantastic for the environment. What they are fantastic at doing is discharging energy and refilling themselves. I mean, once you refill them, they don't refill themselves. They don't just fucking take energy out of the air, like orgone energy out of the air. Don't know what I'm talking about. Look it up. William Reich. It's a whole rabbit hole, gang. It's a whole rabbit hole. Anyway, it's not that. As opposed to lead acid batteries or other types of batteries, lithium batteries can discharge to a very, very low rate and then recharge back up. And they can do it more times than a lead acid battery can. Whereas a lead acid battery, if you discharge them over, probably, depending on the battery, but probably about 30%, if you get under 30% in them, you can really degrade the battery and shorten the lifespan of that battery. But anyway, lithium's got to come from somewhere, and you dig it up out of the ground. What? I thought it came from unicorn farts. This is a shock. Hello, everyone on the YouTubes. Welcome. All right, what else we got going on here? Talking about collapses, here's a couple of another interesting ones on the world stage now. We'll step out of Australia. Banks are in turmoil, but a bigger financial crisis may be brewing elsewhere. This is coming out of CNN Business, so you know it's legit. No, I mean, when it comes to collapses like this, the mainstream media has been suspiciously quiet. on these sorts of things. So it's always interesting when something actually gets into mainstream media. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, a great organization. The IMF warned this week of vulnerabilities among so-called non-bank financial institutions, saying global financial stability could hinge on their resilience. The Bank of England called attention to the same issue last month. What they're doing here is they're throwing shade on SVB. So this is damage control, 100% damage control. SVB went down, Silicon Valley Bank, and now they all want to point at this and go, it's not a bank. Don't worry about the banks. Banks get bailouts. They didn't get a bailout. Don't worry about it. This is not a problem. This is fringe. This is weird stuff. This is non-bank financial institutions. Okay, we're going to put them in that category, and they're not to do with this. So don't freak out and pull all your money out of the bank. Everything's going to be fine. All right, you heard it here first. Do not freak out. Do not pull your money out of the bank, says the IMF. What do I say? I say maybe something slightly different. I'd say if you have all your hard-earned dollaroos in the bank right now, I would really reconsider your choices in life. I would really think about diversifying that wealth in some other way, shape, or form. Also, interesting stuff. I don't have a story on this one, but this is something that I was watching on the YouTubes, was about BlackRock. So BlackRock's just got, and this is from a channel called Stoic Finance, and I highly recommend it. They are being a little bit shadow banned at the moment. So get behind them, jump on to Stoic Finance, hit the subscribe button on them, hit the like on their content, on their videos, help that dude grow, because he puts out good information. Anyway, this information was about BlackRock, and they have basically spent the last 5 months telling their investors that they cannot sell and get out. There was some warning signs, and investors got a little bit jumpy and started leaving, and BlackRock just said no. They were like, hey, I want to cash in my shares, please. And BlackRock said, yeah, cool, awesome, love the idea. We're not going to do it, but just hang tight. So that was November last year. And then December, they did the same. And they've continued doing that every month. So they just released the information for March, and they've done the exact same thing. They are not letting their investors out. They have essentially locked the doors, as it were. And people can't get out of that sinking ship. Why is it sinking? Because they just defaulted to the tune of 500 million, I think, $500 million, which in the grander scheme of things for this bank, I might be wrong on that. I'm pretty sure it's 500 million. I should have snapped this story and put it in front of me, but they just defaulted on that. So like all those people back in November who wanted to pull out when BlackRock, was flying high, couldn't, and now they're probably just sitting there watching this all unfold and go like, what have I done? What have I done? Hey, should have read the fine print. Because what they're doing is illegal, because they said, when you buy these shares, we can just tell you that you can't sell them. Yeah, that's great. Jonathan Stratus, what's happening in Turkey? Don't know. No idea what's going on in Turkey. I have 0 stories on Turkey at the moment, but there was like 60 stories or something like that. And so I've just picked a handful of them tonight to talk about. Let's talk about this one. I thought was very interesting. And this one was actually sent to me. I mean, I was sort of tracking this one a little bit anyway, but then it was sent to me. The follow-up was sent to me by my main source on Instagram. So I really appreciate that. The French, what do we call him now? President? No. Overlord, dictator, I guess. I think that's the kind of realm that he's diving into at the moment. Macron, the Macroni, the macaroni. He went and visited Xi Jinping over in China, right? That's interesting, right? What's going on there? Well, I mean, to be fair, Macron has put these overtures about being a peacekeeper in the past, and I think maybe he's angling for a future Nobel Peace Prize or some sort of like, I don't know what they call it in France, Order of Australia medal or something like that, right? He's done this sort of stuff in the past where he say, "Hey, I can broker a peace deal between Putin and Zelensky. Hey, I can step in here and make this thing work." Meanwhile, I'm putting the boot on the throat of my own people, but don't worry about that because I'm doing good things overseas. So him going over and seeing Xi Jinping, I'm thinking like, oh, maybe he's trying to like ease the tension, baby. Just ease the tension, baby. Like Xi Jinping's trying to do a putt and Macron's right behind him, just like that's it. Just ease it in. You don't have to worry. Okay, let's forget about this Taiwan thing for a bit. That's what I thought might be going on. No, that's not what's going on. He went over to Xi Jinping, pulled out his pocket, and was like, Macron, grab my pocket. And they walked around the jail yard like that for a little while. So then Macron came back and says, this coming out of Politico, Europe must resist pressure to become America's followers, says Macron. Europe must reduce its dependency on the United States and avoid getting dragged into a confrontation between China and the US over Taiwan, French President Emmanuel Macron said in an interview on his plane back from a 3-day state visit to China. So firmly in the pocket there. Very, very interesting. Very interesting little development there. I can only imagine what the reaction within closed doors in the US is. I can only imagine what the reaction within the EU is, although I really think there's some people in the EU who are going like, yeah, you know what? We'd probably have, a whole heap of gas right now if it wasn't for the Americans. I mean, I didn't say that. You didn't hear it here, but in many ways, you can look at everything that's going on here at the moment as a US grab for power, or maybe shoring up of power, a squeezing. Like the US has just rolled into the local deli shop that is Europe, and he's going, yeah, you're a bit late on your payment, Europe. You guys got to make your payment. And they're like, payment for what? For protection. Protection against who? Protection. You know what I mean? Make sure that payment comes in. By the way, you're going to buy our LNG now. You're going to buy our stuff. So that was my best Goodfellas impression. You're not getting a better one out of me tonight. I know, it's pathetic. Yeah, so interesting stuff happening there in Europe. I just want to flag this. I'm not really going to talk too much about it. This leak that's happened of information within the US, it looks huge. There's a number of stuff that's going on there. For those who haven't heard about it, there's an information leak, and it doesn't just pertain to the US. It actually pertains to all the allies and pretty much all the players that are in play at the moment that are getting lined up in the various conflict zones that I've talked about: North Korea, South Korea, China, Taiwan, Ukraine, Israel, Iran, all of it. It's basically, here's US's plan, here it is, and here's how their allies fit into it. So massive fuck up potentially, like huge, like a total clusterfuck, like a shit ton. And I'm talking imperial shit ton, not even a metric shit ton. Would an imperial shit ton be more than a metric? I was thinking about this today. This is the stuff that I worry about. Imperial metric shit tons. So huge sort of thing. A couple of things that come out of it. Just quickly, a lot of the allies, including South Korea, got straight onto it and were like, it's all lies. No, it's not true. It's not true. So it's counter psyops. It's deny. It's your like textbook CIA sort of stuff that's going on there. A few countries are a bit miffed about it, as they should be. The US is pretty miffed about it, and the US has both denied it, that it's even valid information, and also found a culprit. No surprises who the culprit is. I'm just going to hazard some guess. It is male, probably Republican voter, likes guns. That's who it is. That's who they're blaming. Yep. I don't know, maybe it was them, but yeah. South Korea says US documents fake as spy allegations royal alliance. Royal. It's an interesting word. That coming from the Japan Times. So South Korea's presidential office said Tuesday that a significant portion of information contained in the reportedly leaked classified Pentagon documents is fake. It's not real. So that's just a little bit of geopolitical stuff. On the other side of things, China State TV displayed a chilling video of simulated full-scale attack on Taiwan and how they would carry out the attack. I'm going to call bullshit on that. I don't think they would advertise that. I think what they are advertising here. They wouldn't advertise how they attack. I think what they're advertising here is that they're pretty willing to do it. That they're saying they're ready. Essentially, China is ready, and this isn't just a signal that they've done. In solo. There are many, many, many things that China have done right now in the past 4 days. That it's them putting their hand up and saying, we're pretty much at the point to do this. Will war start tomorrow? Probably not. All right, probably not. I think when they're saying we're ready to do it, I think this is still a 5 to 10 year sort of timeline that we're looking at there. Last couple of things that I'm going to talk about. Oh, here's one. China is reportedly selling off treasuries as it prepares for a blockade of Taiwan and a full-scale war with the United States. All right. So that's a little kind of headline from a story there. Here's an interesting little thing, and the reason I'm pointing this one out, because it goes along with that last story that I was talking about. It's another signal that China is selling treasuries, but also how you read news. And I try to do this myself, and I try to also put this information out so that if you are reading news, that you can also maybe apply some of these rough kind of rules that I use when I'm looking at this sort of stuff. China is reportedly selling off treasuries. Okay. So there's information somewhere. There's a report that they're selling off treasuries. That we can sort of say that's fact or truer. As it prepares for a blockade of Taiwan and full-scale war with the United States. That is not. That is total fluff. That is the writer of this story wanting you to read the story, because you see that sort of stuff and it's inflammatory and it catches the imaginations. It's like, whoa, that is so, wow, I need to read this. This is just solely, I need to read this. This is just solely based off the fact that they're selling treasuries, which is some really dry, boring financial news. How do you spice this up? Full-scale war with the United States. So just a bit of a warning, whenever you're looking at these sort of stories and you see this headline, when you're doom scrolling away, you go, whoa, this is full on. A lot of people pick this sort of stuff up, pick this shit up, and then go repeat that to other people. Hey, did you know China is ready to go? They are preparing for a full-scale war with the United States. No, there's no facts to that. We can see signs that they are building up to try and take Taiwan. That may lead to some sort of war with the United States, but there's many, 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 many steps between now and there. What they're doing is they're selling treasuries. I mean, hey, if I was looking at the US and the US government at the moment, the US economic system, I might be doing the same as well. All right, let's talk about our food system. Not our food system, the US food system. A massive explosion at a dairy farm in Texas leaves at least 18,000 cattle dead and one person critically injured. That's pretty horrific. 18,000 cattle. Boom, gone. It was an explosion, but it was a fire in a the story I was reading said barn, and it conjures up images of this like white roofed, red painted wood barn. But what I think they're talking about is like a really nice way to put those industrial warehouse type complexes of the industrial meat complex. In the US, they're mass herds that they've got crammed into a small area. That's how you would get like something like a fire or an explosion killing 18,000. You couldn't imagine that here in Australia. An explosion might kill like I mean, I went for a hike this morning, and we're walking past paddocks, and there's cows out in those paddocks and there's sheep out in those paddocks, and I was like, an explosion that would kill 18,000 cows. I don't even know if there's 18,000 cows there probably is 18,000 cows in like the larger area that I'm in, but they're spread out. They're everywhere. You'd kill maybe 4 or 5, I reckon, from a large explosion, because they don't hang out together a lot. They're just sort of dispersed. That's grass-fed beef for you. By the way, it's something interesting for people that I thought everyone kind of knew this. When it says like grass-fed beef in Australia, that's like that's how we grow beef in Australia. Just FYI. Generally speaking, most cows are grass-fed beef, and New Zealand's quite good at it. Feel free to argue with me if you want on this. Any of my New Zealander friends, but my perception, at least, is that Australia and New Zealand has good beef, very healthy beef compared to the rest of the world, and New Zealand is better than Australia. So, correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, this is another attack, or not attack. This is another blow to a food system that we're seeing. We're seeing these sorts of things happen more and more as our food supply is attacked, not only physically attacked. And again, I'm not saying attacked as in somebody went and blew these cows up, although I wouldn't put past some extremist vegan to do this. No, it's an attack as in there is something, an accident, a disruption, a falling apart of the food system in a physical sense, and of course, or as always, in a propaganda psyops sort of sense, where we're getting told stuff like, meat, that's bad for you. Man, I had a couple of sirloin steaks today, and a friend has given me long-term loan Traeger. I'm not advertising brand or anything, but smoker. I smoked those things up for 45 minutes. Perfect. I'm going to do a brisket on the weekend in that smoke. It's fantastic. Anyway, that's my little advertisement to eat more meat. Be a good, healthy human being and eat meat. Stay away from the shit. Stay away from the seed oils, kids. That's it for tonight. I'm going to wrap it up there. As you might be able to tell, I'm pretty tired. That's all I got. I hope you're doing great. I hope you're doing fantastic. I hope you're still smiling. Don't be staring at the doom and gloom too much, gang. The world isn't all bad, and we've got a lot of opportunities still within our grasp. We're slowly in the decline, but that's okay. That is just more and more motivation. When I read these stories, every story I read, it's more and more motivation for me to pull my finger out of my butthole, get my mind out of neutral, drop the clutch, and get moving on being more prepared, being a more prepared human being, being a more self-reliant human being, a more resilient human being, and a more self-responsible human being. That's what my goal is. That's my 2023 hashtag life goals. All right, gang, that's it. Stay happy, stay safe, keep prepping, keep gardening. And until next time, Semper Paratus.